Social media plays a massive part in our daily lives, and those of us who are more active on these platforms share many aspects of our daily lives with those that we are connected to. This has given law enforcement agencies the opportunity to glean extra information on certain criminals that they're pursuing, resulting in some fascinating cases. Number 10. In recent years, law enforcement agencies have been making use of social media more often to track fugitives, and in some of these cases, they didn't have to work very hard to get a result, as some of these criminals decided to boast about their crimes online. Even those of us who have never been involved in any criminal activity would assume that when someone successfully robs a bank, they would keep as quiet as possible about it, since the police would certainly be on the lookout for them, and if word got out about who was involved, chances are they would end up in jail fairly quickly. But this thought didn't seem to cross the mind of 19-year-old Estefany Martinez, even before she and her accomplices went through with the daring bank robbery, as they started posting clues about the crime on Facebook. On the 21st of March 2011, Martinez, who was a bank teller at the very bank that she was planning to rob, made a cryptic post to Facebook in which she stated, "Get money." This came after she enlisted a fellow bank teller, 19-year-old Margarita Rivera, her boyfriend, 18-year-old Ricky Gonzalez, and Rivera's brother, 22-year-old Arturo Solano, to join her in the heist. In preparation for the robbery, Martinez and Rivera made sure that they were the only ones working during their shift, and at around 5:45 p.m., Gonzalez and Solano entered the bank, their faces hidden behind plastic masks that they'd purchased at a dollar store. The pair then put on a show, demanding money from the two tellers. While one of the men collected the money from the cash drawers, the other accompanied Martinez and Rivera to the bank's vault to pilfer what he could. In an effort to hide the fact that they were involved in the heist, the two tellers made sure to place tracking devices in the money bags along with the cash. But they warned their accomplices to get rid of them as soon as they left the bank, so that they couldn't be traced. After the two men left the premises, Martinez and Rivera called 911 and reported the robbery while giving false descriptions of their accomplices. When all was said and done, the group met at Rivera's apartment, where they divided up their ill-gotten gains, and shortly after, they seemingly couldn't contain themselves, as they started posting about the robbery on Facebook. The very next day, Gonzalez posted, "You have to pass the line sometimes to get this money," likely meaning that he had to go to extreme lengths to have this kind of money in his possession. He also mentioned wiping his teeth with $100 bills, and the following day, Martinez created a post that read, "I'm rich." But this strange activity didn't go unnoticed, as a tipster contacted Crime Stoppers on the 30th of March to report what they'd seen on Facebook. All four of the robbers were arrested, and Martinez, a single mother who had plans of attending college in the future, would now be facing jail time instead. Her lawyer stated that Martinez is young and immature, and hence didn't stop to think that bragging about a crime on social media could get her caught. The Facebook posts were used as evidence against them in court, and Rivera then revealed that she thought the heist would be easy to pull off, since she hadn't heard of anyone being arrested for a robbery that took place at the same bank in November the previous year. Number 9. During the early 1900s, a man named Willie Sutton became known as a prolific bank robber, who not only had a talent for taking other people's hard-earned money, but he was also said to be a master of disguise. Thanks to this, he became known as the Actor, since he often dressed up as a police officer, a window cleaner, a security guard, or a messenger to hide his identity while carrying out one of his robberies. Sutton first served time in prison for safecracking when he was 25 years old, but as soon as he was released, he was back at his old ways again, robbing banks and stores on a regular basis. But he was soon apprehended and sent back to prison. But he ended up escaping and would only be caught again in 1952. When all was said and done, it was estimated that he'd stolen as much as $2 million from banks and stores, an absolute fortune back in those days. Sutton also served as a role model for a modern bank robber, 24-year-old Jesse Hippolyte, though the latter certainly wouldn't be remembered for his crime since he was quickly arrested after bragging about his robberies on social media in 2011. Hippolyte, who went by the moniker Willie Sutton Jr. on his Facebook profile, Also left clues to at least one of his robberies as he posted the words, "I gotta get that money, man," just 45 minutes before he entered a branch of the Chase Manhattan Bank in Brooklyn to rob it. Further proving that he wasn't the brightest criminal, he also posted, saying, quote, "What if we all got fed up with this recession and started running inside every bank to give us the money that belongs to us?" But not all of his heists were successful. On one occasion, he entered a Chase Bank in Coney Island with the intention of robbing it, but luckily he was forced to flee before carrying out his plans. But he didn't wait long, as he traveled to a Capital One bank the following day and carried out a robbery there instead, after handing the teller a note stating if they didn't hand over all their money, he would harm everyone in the building. But he failed to keep a low profile, as he started posting photos of himself holding large wads of $100 bills to Facebook, along with status updates, including one that read, "I want to promote a heist. Who's with it?" He was clearly under the impression that he would never be caught, but he didn't realize he'd made a crucial error during one of his robberies, since a bank teller managed to take down his license plate number, which they then provided to the police. This, along with his very revealing Facebook posts, were all that was needed to seal his fate for good, and after he was tracked down, Hippolyte was arrested. It was then discovered that he was present in areas where 19 different bank robberies took place, and he would face a lengthy prison sentence. He was ultimately only charged with 3 counts of bank robbery and received a sentence of 151 months, which equates to about 12.5 years behind bars, which must have come as quite a relief to him as he was facing as many as 60 years in jail. One source states that Hippolyte used some of the money on manicures and pedicures, something he certainly won't be enjoying for the next few years. Number 8. Most bank robberies are chaotic and often violent events, though they rarely result in anyone being injured, since banks instruct their employees to comply with the robber's demands. This is done to ensure that none of the bank's employees or customers are targeted for resisting. Most bank robbers are aware of this fact, and hence they'll often use fake firearms to intimidate staff members, and are usually able to flee the scene before the police are contacted. But bank robbers are very frequently caught just a short while after committing their crime, either because they were careless during the robbery, or because someone recognized them from CCTV security footage. It's also unusual for these robbers to be very intimidating and aggressive during the act, as this also discourages confrontations from anyone present in the bank. But one man seems to be the exception to this rule. In May of 2015, a 23-year-old man named Dominique Alansa decided to rob a bank located at 297 Constitution Drive in Virginia. And unlike most robbers, he didn't yell, didn't intimidate any of the customers, but instead acted very politely, a factor that would come up again when he was awaiting sentencing. After walking into the bank, Alansa handed the teller a note demanding that they hand over any cash they had, and the teller quickly complied. The note read, "I need 150,000 bands right now, please." It continued, "Police take 3 to 4 minutes to get here. I would appreciate it if you ring the alarm a minute after I'm gone. Make sure the money doesn't blow up on my way out." He also added a smiley face at the end of the note. Just a few minutes later, Alansa was $150,000 richer, and he quickly made his way out of the building before fleeing. But his newfound riches didn't last long, as it only took around 20 minutes for the police to catch up with him, thanks to a serious misjudgment on his part. Quite unbelievably, Alansa decided to record the robbery on his phone, and while still in the bank, he posted a video to Instagram showing the cashier handing him the money that he demanded. He also posted a second video of the robbery as well as a photo of the note that he handed to the bank teller. But someone saw the content and proceeded to inform the police, who then had a very easy job to track him down. Alansa pleaded guilty to the charges against him, and he was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months behind bars. But he inexplicably believes he should not have served any jail time, since he doesn't consider the event to be a robbery. He maintains that he's innocent by logic, and has stated that since he only asked for the money, it wasn't really a robbery. He claims that the teller could merely have refused to give him the cash, and he would have then simply walked away without incident. When asked why he posted the incriminating evidence to his Instagram account, he added that the entire robbery was actually a publicity stunt, and that he hoped when he got out of jail, a famous rapper like Jay-Z would contact him to sign him to their record label. Number 7. 28-year-old John Mogan and 24-year-old Ashley Dubois are yet another couple of bank robbers who couldn't resist the urge to boast about the money they'd stolen. And as is to be expected, this landed them firmly in the hands of the law. In a statement to the press, Lieutenant Dale Parrish of the Pickaway County Sheriff's Office stated that decision-making is definitely not one of Mogan's strong suits, and it's easy to agree with him since his actions after the robbery almost defy any logic. But this isn't the only part of his decision-making ability that seems to be lacking, since he had just finished serving a stint in prison for a different bank robbery a month before carrying out this particular heist. While most logical people would be scared straight by a prison term, Mogan just carried on with his old lifestyle, deciding to rob this bank after spending time in jail on at least 4 previous occasions. On the 24th of August, 2015, Mogan walked into the Savings Bank branch in Asheville, Ohio, and he handed the teller a note demanding money. His face was obscured by a black hoodie that he was wearing, but it didn't take long for him to be recognized via his Facebook account. The amount of cash stolen by Mogan has not been disclosed, but as soon as the cashier handed him the money, he exited the building and fled on foot. There's a good chance that he would have gotten away with the crime if it weren't for what he did next. Mogan and his girlfriend Dubois have a joint Facebook account, and just a week after successfully carrying out the robbery, he seemingly could no longer contain himself, and he started boasting about all the money he had. In one photo, he and Dubois can be seen holding each other and smiling broadly, while Mogan holds large amounts of bills in each hand. Another shows him using a thick wad of bills as a pretend telephone while he looks directly into the camera. The one photo that has grabbed most people's attention, though, shows Mogan with a large stack of bills that he's placed in his mouth, while he stares wide-eyed at the camera. Many people have pointed out that this is not only a risky thing to do after robbing a bank, but that it's also very unsanitary. But germs were the last thing on this robber's mind. CCTV images of the robbery were made available to the public, and very quickly, a torrent of tips started flowing in from people who recognized Mogan. These tips were followed up on, and soon investigators came across his Facebook profile with the incriminating photos. Since they were aware that he didn't have a job at the time, they were suspicious about the amounts of money he was flaunting, and it soon became clear that he was the culprit. Both Mogan and Dubois were taken into custody and charged with robbery and theft. Some sources state that Dubois acted as a getaway driver during the heist, while others state that Mogan fled on foot, but either way, she was to be found complicit. Dubois pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 2 years behind bars. Mogan was also found guilty and sentenced to 3 years in prison. The couple has also been ordered to repay the money that they stole, since it's not been recovered. Number 6. While some bank robbers get caught thanks to evidence that they post to their social media accounts, it usually takes at least a small amount of detective work to piece the clues together, since no one would be brazen enough to openly admit that they were a bank robber. But this didn't occur to 34-year-old Daniel Jones from Wales, as he openly stated on his Facebook profile that he was the top bank robber from Penarth. In one crime spree that lasted a total of 5 days, though, Jones didn't just rob banks, but seemingly stole from any business that he thought would suit his needs. The spree began in February of that year, when Jones entered a cab in Grangetown, Cardiff, while brandishing a 12-inch sharpened blade. Immediately after getting into the taxi, he yelled at the driver to hand over all his money or he would be harmed. Next, he set his sights on a Lifestyle Express in Canton, also in Cardiff, where he demanded cash and cigarettes from the cashier before making a hasty retreat. One would think that he'd pilfered enough and would then decide to lie low for a while, but Jones had other plans. Not satisfied with his haul, he decided to rob a Lloyd's Bank branch, and after approaching the teller, he once again produced his blade and shouted for them to hand over all the money they had. He ended up grabbing bills from the register himself and fled with around £1,500 or about $1,900 in cash. The police were immediately called, and the hunt for Jones had begun in earnest, with a $31,400 reward being offered to anyone who came forward with information leading to his apprehension. It isn't known whether Jones was aware of the reward, but he still wasn't done. His next heist took place at 2:15 a.m. in Leckwith after he entered a McDonald's and jumped over the counter, once again threatening staff that if they didn't comply with his demands, he would use the blade to injure them. He then made his way to the restaurant's safe and helped himself to $345 in bills and a further $700 in coins, leaving with just over $1,000 before hopping back over the counter and making his way out of the restaurant. His last robbery took place in his hometown of Penarth, where he entered a post office and once again wielded his blade, eventually making off with $8,800 in cash. But it wouldn't be long before his spree was brought to an abrupt end. Not only had Jones bragged about being a bank robber on Facebook, but he was also seemingly known to be a criminal by members of his community, as the police quickly received a number of tips from members of the public, and he was identified as the robber. When he was finally tracked down, officers found him while he was using illegal substances and he was taken into custody. He still had about $2,500 in cash in his possession. At his trial, it was revealed that he'd been arrested for 96 different offenses and that he had a total of 41 convictions against his name. These charges included other robberies and thefts, disorderly conduct while under the influence of alcohol, possession of illegal substances, criminal damage, as well as committing grievous bodily harm. He was charged with 5 counts of robbery, as well as 5 counts of possessing a blade. He pleaded guilty to all of the charges and stated that he'd relapsed into using illegal substances after his relationship failed. He was found to be a dangerous criminal who would likely reoffend, and hence he was sentenced to 8 years behind bars. Upon his release, he'll also have to serve 3 years on license. Number 5. One sure way to get caught as a criminal is to steal from your own workplace. This is already a bad idea to begin with, but since most workplaces have security cameras installed, the likelihood of getting away with such a crime is very small, since the culprit can be easily identified. But in some cases, it seems the temptation to steal is just too overwhelming to ignore, as is evidenced by a case from 2019 involving a 29-year-old man called Orlando Henderson, who was an employee at a Wells Fargo bank in Charlotte, North Carolina. What makes this case slightly different is the fact that Henderson took certain steps to conceal his crime, and yet he boasted about his ill-gotten gains on social media accounts, specifically his Instagram page. While working at the bank, Henderson stole money from the safe on at least 18 different occasions, and it's said that he managed to pilfer as much as $88,000 before finally being caught. Investigators revealed that he stole the money from the bank's safe and then walked a short distance to a nearby ATM, where he would then deposit the money into his personal bank account. He then used the money to live an elaborate lifestyle, putting down a large amount of money as a deposit on a 2019 Mercedes-Benz. It was also found that he applied for a car loan, but to do so, he had to provide false details. But as one would imagine, stealing from a bank that you work at is no easy task, and Henderson had to take steps to ensure that he wouldn't be caught. He destroyed a number of documents and had to resort to making phony entries in the bank's books, as was revealed by the FBI after his arrest. But despite all the work he did to cover up his crimes, he decided to post several incriminating photos to Instagram, in which he can be seen holding large amounts of cash. In one photo, he has 8 stacks of bills in his hand as he looks at the camera while his picture is taken. When it became apparent that Henderson was the one responsible for the missing money, he was tracked down in San Diego, California, where he was taken into custody by FBI agents. He was charged with 2 counts of financial institution fraud, embezzlement, 12 counts of making false entries, transactional money laundering, as well as 19 counts of theft. If found guilty, he'll face up to 30 years in prison, and he'll have to repay up to $1 million in fines for each of the first charges. He'll also face up to 10 years for the money laundering charge, which also carries a $250,000 fine if he's convicted. During the investigation, it was also found that he'd asked several people to lie on his behalf, since his bank statements would not have allowed him to obtain this loan that he needed in order to buy the Mercedes-Benz. Strangely, there's no information on what sentence Henderson eventually received, but it is certain that it'll be a long time before he's allowed to see the outside of a jail cell again. Number 4. Some bank robbers are so confident that they'll meet no resistance while carrying out a heist that they don't even bother to acquire real weapons or firearms. Some use plastic firearms or fake blades to intimidate staff and customers. But one man took this a step further when he decided to rob a bank in 2010. At the time, Ryan Holmesley was living a difficult life, as he'd become homeless while living in Oregon and was suffering from an illegal substance addiction. He decided to rob a key bank branch in Tualatin, but since he didn't have either a real or a fake firearm, he came up with a different plan. After walking into the bank, he placed a box on one of the teller's counters and then handed them a note that instructed them to hand over the money. His demand was strangely specific, as he demanded exactly $2,000. The note also stated that the money should contain no dye packs and included the words "or boom," which the teller took to mean that there was an explosive device inside the box that he'd brought with him. Feeling justifiably frightened by the threat, the teller handed over $505, only a quarter of what Holmesley demanded, but he took what was offered and made his escape. When CCTV footage of the crime was released to the public, the robber soon earned himself a nickname, the Weres Waldo Bandit, thanks to the striped shirt and glasses that he was wearing. This seemed to make him rather happy, and he started posting the same surveillance photos to his Facebook account, proudly revealing that he was now in fact a bank robber. He was quickly arrested and then revealed that he only decided to rob the bank about 30 seconds before he did so. He also revealed that as soon as he walked out of the bank, he removed the telltale shirt, threw it in a trash can, and then walked across the street to a coffee shop where he ordered a macchiato. He watched as police officers arrived and ran into the bank, none the wiser that he was within their grasp. He also saw them cordon off the bank with police tape and watched as they interviewed witnesses, but he knew that they would eventually make their way to the coffee shop, and so he made his escape before they arrived. He hailed a cab and traveled downtown, where he purchased illegal substances. He was certain that he would be caught very soon, since his photo had been all over the internet and he made no attempt to elude investigators. But since he'd gotten rid of his striped shirt, he wasn't as easily recognizable as he thought, and he continued walking the streets a free man. On one occasion, he approached a police officer and asked for directions to a donut shop, and the officer failed to recognize him. Not long after that, he saw a Fox Most Wanted segment on television in which the presenter was making fun of the outfit that he wore during the robbery, and he felt that he would never be caught. He posted a link to an article about the robbery on his Facebook account, but this also got no attention, and so he posted more clues, including the words "The Weres Waldo Bandit strikes again" and "DB Cooper was a great man. The Weres Waldo Bandit will be better. See you guys in Seattle next." He then grew even more brazen with his posts, stating that he was only committing crimes to pay for his diabetes medication. He also posted a music video by the band The Fun-Lovin' Criminals, which depicts a bank robbery, and added to this was the song that he heard in his head while carrying out the robbery. Soon after, he changed his profile picture to the surveillance photo from the robbery, but soon enough he was recognized by a homeless woman. She pointed at him and simply said "Waldo." He found this amusing, so he handed her a $100 bill and left. Due to his substance abuse, Holmesley had to be hospitalized and underwent surgery, but when he woke up, he realized he was cuffed to his bed. He noticed 2 FBI agents sitting outside his room, and he knew that he'd finally been caught. He would ultimately receive a 4-year prison sentence, with a year added on for violating his post-prison supervision order. He would eventually admit that he was ashamed of what he had done, but he's since kicked his addiction, and a judge told him that he's lucky to still be alive today. Number 3. Jules Baler, a 22-year-old man from Brooklyn, was sentenced to 3-year and 7-year prison terms that were run consecutively for committing a string of bank robberies in Michigan in 2015. He also received a 3-year supervised term and will have to repay a total of $16,309. Baler was also charged with 2 other bank robberies that took place at a Genesis credit union in Pontiac in February of that year, at a chemical bank branch in Bay City in March of that year, but these 2 charges were ultimately dropped. It was alleged that Baler brandished a firearm when he committed the robberies, and all in all, he managed to steal a total of $15,000. During the Bay City robbery, he failed to hide his identity, and a surveillance photo was released to the public. Just a short while after committing the crimes, the FBI was informed that Baler had posted photos to his Facebook account, in which he could be seen holding the very firearm that he used during the robberies. They checked his Facebook profile and found that he was an exact match for the man in the robbery surveillance photo. They also noticed a post in which he stated, "Bought my first house and chopper today. Life's great." Also included on the profile was a photo of Baler's house in Pontiac, and they started surveying the property. They didn't have to wait long, as they spotted the robber leaving the house on the same day that the stakeout started, and he got into his car with a friend of his. They followed the car and eventually initiated a traffic stop, during which he was arrested. Inside the car, they found a duffel bag, and when it was searched, investigators found the same firearm that was used in the robberies, providing them with even more vital evidence. Baler didn't resist the arrest, and he immediately confessed to being the robber that they were after. He also consented to a search of his house, and there, investigators found the clothes that he was wearing during the thefts. Baler would then reveal that he had a very tough childhood growing up, but it was also discovered that he was a proud member of a dangerous street gang that called themselves the Latin Kings. He was ultimately charged with bank robbery and carrying a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence. He pleaded guilty to all of the charges and was sentenced to 2 prison terms that added up to a total of 10 years behind bars. A judge stated that they were sympathetic towards his difficult upbringing, but that he had to be removed from society since he posed a threat to the safety of members of the public. Number 2. Identity theft has become one of the most invasive and personal of crimes, since criminals are able to use their victims' names to carry out further crimes, and in many of these instances, the victims are completely unaware that anything has happened until it's too late. There have been many cases where people find out that their identities have been stolen when they apply for a bank loan, an account at a clothing store, or even when they apply for official documentation, only to be told that their credit has somehow gone bad or their name is linked to a crime that's been committed. This was of no concern to 2 identity thieves, 44-year-old Nathaniel May and his girlfriend, 39-year-old Tiwana Thomason from Broward County, Florida, when they decided to take their operation to the next level in 2013. But little did they know that this would be their undoing. Their plan was to meet with a fellow criminal who claimed that he could help the couple file fraudulent tax returns in the names of their victims. They agreed and met with the man at a Morton's Steakhouse in Fort Lauderdale, where they discussed their plans and handed over a flash drive, which they claimed contained as many as 50,000 stolen identities. But unbeknownst to them, the man was an IRS informant who was part of an investigation into the identity thefts. He then handed the drive over to the police, who found just 46 names on the list, but they still didn't know the names of the 2 culprits. Some sources state that the drive contained 50 names. But investigators were able to extract metadata from the drive and soon learned May's name. Luckily, May had taken a photo of his steak dinner while at the restaurant, and he uploaded it to his Instagram, which was then found by an IRS agent, complete with a profile photo. The photo, which featured a steak and macaroni and cheese dinner, was captioned Morton's, with a timestamp that showed that it was uploaded at 11:24 p.m., during the time that the couple met with the informant, and it became clear that May and Thomason were the criminals they'd been hunting. It was then discovered that May had also committed wire fraud in the past, a crime that he'd been convicted of already. Both May and Thomason were quickly tracked down and arrested. A search warrant was executed at the couple's apartment, and their computers as well as their storage devices were confiscated. When flash drives found in the apartment were searched, investigators found the names, addresses, dates of birth, and social security numbers of thousands of people who were potential victims. May was found guilty of identity theft crimes and sentenced to 5.5 years in prison, which would be followed by 3 years of supervised release. Thomason got off more lightly and was ordered to serve 5 years probation. Number 1. When most of us think of bank robbers, we picture intimidating figures brandishing large firearms who storm into a bank and yell for everyone inside to get on the floor before they pilfer the safe and make a hasty getaway. This certainly isn't the case in a bank robbery carried out by a 19-year-old woman named Hannah Sabata, who made a YouTube video about the crimes that she'd committed on the 27th of November, 2012. In the video, Sabata can be seen writing on a piece of paper that she then holds up to the camera, revealing the words, "Hello, I stole from a car." She then holds up the items that she stole from a Pontiac Grand Am. She then continues writing and shows a piece of paper with the words, "Then I stole the car." She then holds up a set of keys that belongs to the stolen vehicle, all the while smiling into the camera. The next alarming sign she holds up reads, "Then I robbed a bank," and this time her smile is bigger than ever. She reaches over to her bed and reveals a huge wad of cash that she'd stolen from the Cornerstone Bank in the city of York, Nebraska. The video reveals that she took a total of $6,256, which she then flaunts to the camera. She adds that her mother noticed that she was in a good mood that day, and just assumed that she'd met a new boy, completely unaware of her daughter's crimes. She then looks at the camera and mouths the words, "Why?" After which she reveals another sign that reads, "For one, the whole system is just a game." She continues, "But more specifically, because the government stole my baby." She continues, "I may not be a mother anymore, but I can still find purpose." And this is followed by the word "end," and the video ends there. It would later be revealed that Sabata had been planning to rob a bank for some time, and she just managed to find the courage that day. When robbing the bank, she was armed with a fake firearm that only fired pellets, but the teller had no way of knowing this, and hence handed over the money. She then drove back to her hometown of Stromsburg that evening, where she made the YouTube video, which was titled "Chick Bank Robber." Thanks to this brazen admission, it didn't take long for the authorities to put two and two together, and they soon realized that it was Sabata who had robbed the bank. They traveled to her home the following day and she was arrested, still wearing the same outfit that she wore during the daring robbery. Unbeknownst to her, CCTV footage had been shown on the news the previous evening, and one of her family members recognized her, after which they contacted the police. The YouTube video provided even more evidence, and her fate was sealed. The stolen car was located near her house, and next to it, investigators found a bracelet containing the name Hannah on the ground, and it was taken in as evidence. Despite being arrested and facing time in prison, Sabata stated that it was the best day of her life. At her trial, she was sentenced to between 10 and 20 years behind bars, and her attorney asked that she be given probation, but since she lied to her parole officer before the trial had even started, she was given jail time. It would later be revealed that Sabata had been diagnosed with bipolar and multiple personality disorders, and that she was likely in the midst of a manic episode when she committed the crimes. The judge stated that she took all these factors into consideration, but that Sabata would pose a threat to society if she were to be paroled, and so she would have to serve the time that she was given. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.